Hi there, everybody. So this is a video that goes over some things in Chapter 4, including uh, arrays, array lists, strings, and a few of the looping constructs you can use to work with lists. So first thing to know, if you're going to use array lists, you need to import ArrayList, the class ArrayList, because it's not part of standard Java, unlike arrays, which are. Okay, next thing here is we define a string called word1. We put in it, and we make it equal to ABCD. Why are we doing this? Because, in fact, strings store their characters, their list of characters internally as an array, and we'll see that in just a minute in more detail. All right, this line, whenever you see these square brackets, you know you're dealing with an array. So in this case, an array of characters. This is a shortcut for creating an array, where you just use braces surrounding the elements that you're putting in the array. So this is mostly used when introducing arrays and just starting to use them so that you can have some information in an array easily and quickly. Here, we're defining an array. Instead of using the shortcut, we're just saying new char, and then how many elements the array can hold. Now, unlike an array list, which will grow and expand automatically as you add elements to it, arrays don't. You know, you make an array of a certain size, and that's it. You can't. If you try to go beyond that size, you'll get a out of range error. So this array actually has indices from 0 to 19, which can store 20 elements. Okay. Next, we declare an array list. That will be an array list of string objects. It's called words, and then we do this new array list, say it's a string again, in the parentheses at the end. Okay. And finally, using that shortcut technique with the braces, we're making an array of a type string called colors, and it has these colors in it. Now let's just look at the constructor quickly. Word 3, which was this one, right? The array of characters that can hold 20 characters. We're just setting the 0 element of that array to the letter A. Just we could have done anything. This number could be anything from 0 to 19, and this could be any character value. Okay. Then we're doing 3 times we're doing words.add, which is add is a method of the ArrayList class that will allow us to add a element to the array list. So this words, as you remember, is an array list of strings. So we're adding 3 strings to that array list. This will be at position 0, position 1, position 2. Okay, so let's compile that. Good. And we'll make a new one, test 1. And we'll inspect it. So here's that string word1 that contains ABCD that we made with the shortcut. Let's go ahead and double click on that and see what we get. Now, I've said a number of times in the past that strings are complex objects. Right? They have a number of elements to them, and you start to see that here. We have inside of the string object, there's a field for the offset, count, and hash. The only thing that sort of makes sense here is this count, right? 4, because we know that there are 4 ABCD characters in this, so that makes sense. What these are, we're not going to worry about right now. So, but, oh look, this is an array, there's the square brackets, of chars called value. Let's double click that. And, oh, interesting. There's the length. And at position 0, there's A, position 1, there's B, position 2, C, 3, D, etc. Okay? So any string that you create is actually internally represented by an array, which is the length of the number of characters in the string. And there's actually a string method called char@, that you can use to access each of these array positions. So if you did, let's close this up. So this particular string is called word1. If you did word, excuse me, 1.char at 0, you would get back A. Okay? Now let's just look at this word2, and that's the same thing, right? So remember, this is just an array of strings, sorry, an array of characters, not a string. And let's see what this is. Oh yes, that's that array of characters that we said could hold 20 characters. And as you can see, there are 19 spots all set to go, ready to hold characters. Pretty cool, huh? So if we'd made that array of size 200, there would be 0 through 199 here. Okay? Just as an aside here, almost everything you do with arrays, array lists, has to do with sequentially, sometimes not exactly sequentially, but basically most of the time sequentially accessing the different places in the list. Okay, so what we need to do, the way we access these positions is through their index value. So we're going to need a loop that will take some variable from, in this case, we'd move some variable from 0, right, down to 19. And we'll look at that more in just a second. Okay? Oops. I'm going to do one more thing here. Inspect. So this array list, right, of type string. Now I said before that the array list is actually, internally it stores its values in an array. And you can see that right there. There are the square brackets, right? And this is an array of objects, strings in this case. And if we open that up, we'll see its default starting size is 10, which tells you something interesting, which is that when you make a new array list, without saying anything, without telling Java anything, it gives you 10 positions. And if those 10 positions actually fill up, 0 through 9, the Java compiler will actually just create more for you. Just the way it created these 10 spots for you without asking, it will create more if you need more. All right, so at position 0, remember we did that add array list, and then add use, and then arrays. So those, as I said, are at 0, 1, and 2. Cool? Cool. The rest of these are null, which is just Java's way of saying that they don't point to anything, right? There's no reference to an object. Now remember, strings are objects, right? Strings are objects. So these are actually the objects, but here there are no objects, so null is used to indicate that there are no objects stored in those positions. All right, cool. So now we have some loops. Let's just look at these quickly. This is what's known as a for each loop, and I find that students really like this loop. It's nice and simple, and you can use it for both arrays and array lists. So what you first do is you do the type of object that you're looping through. In this case, colors consists of strings. So we say, okay, well, basically what we're doing is we're declaring a variable here of the type of object that's contained in the loop. So we're declaring a variable a color right here. It's a temporary variable, a local variable that will only be used inside this loop. Now, then we have to say what's the name of the list that we're traversing through. And the name of that list is colors. So the way the for each loop works is a color will sequentially point to the elements that exist in colors, right? One at a time. So when we do system out println a color, well, it's going to point to the first element in the array colors. which is blue, right? And then automatically after doing that, it comes back, to start the loop again. And it knows that there are more things in the loop. This is all done under the hood. And it makes a color equal to the next thing in the loop, which is red, and then yellow, and so on, okay? So that's a really simple way to traverse through loops. Here's another way that gives you a little more control, a little bit more complicated. This uses a for loop where you specify more information. So you declare an integer variable. I use LCV. You could use any variable name, has to be an integer. And I use LCV. It stands for loop control variable. So this is the variable that sort of controls your processing of the loop. I'm starting at 0, but you don't have to. You could start at any value you wanted. You could start at the end of the loop and go backwards, right? And that would be LCV minus minus here. So you could start midway through anywhere you want. This is the stopping condition. So LCV, well, this loop will keep going as long as LCV is less than colors.length. So length is a built-in method of the array class that returns the excuse me, the number of elements in the array. And notice that unlike all other methods which have the parentheses, this method of the array class does not do that. It's just an exception that you have to learn. Okay? And then we increment the loop here. So we're going to go through all the elements of colors. And here we're going to actually use the loop control variable to go in and look in each box, so to speak, at each index position of the array and print that out. Whereas here, what we're doing is making this temporary variable, acolor, equal to the value that's at a box, and then printing that temporary variable. Two different ways to accomplish the same thing. But this one, this loop, gives us the ability to go backwards, to start in the middle, to count by twos, or whatever we want. Right? It gives us more control, a little bit more complicated. Here's one that gives us even more control, which is a while loop. In this, you have to specify the local variable that you're going to use to control the while loop. Use LCV again. You set it to its starting value 0. Again, you could set it to colors.length and then go backwards, right? But just to be consistent with these, we're going to start with 0. Then the condition of the while loop says basically this same condition that we have here. As long as LCV is less than colors.length, keep going. We print out what is found at the LCV position, which is 0 the first time through the loop. Then we increment LCV. It's really important you do this, or your loop will just go on forever, right? If LCV doesn't change, and LCV is less than colors.length, then the loop will just get stuck in an infinite loop, and you'll have to stop the program manually. So make sure that you approach your stopping condition, whatever it is, by changing your loop control variable, right? The advantage of a while loop is you can do all kinds of things, right? You can exit the loop when a certain condition is met. You can do that too with these, but it's not done as elegantly. Right? With these, you can do it very, very precisely, or in a better way. The only way to get out of these loops until the end is with a break statement. With these, you could use an if statement to get out of the loop when a certain condition is met. Okay, so almost done. So what are the types of things that you need to be able to do with arrays or array lists? Well, you obviously need to be able to print out all the elements, right, of the array list, say from 0 to n or from n to 0. Then there are all kinds of, literally, just huge numbers of problems that involve doing things with lists. So a couple that you might want to try. I'll add these in here. Public, we'll make this just a boolean for the heck of it, is palindrome. Palindrome is a word that you can flip the letters, reverse the letters, and it says the same thing. So Abel was I ere I saw Adam can be flipped. I've got a palindrome. Or a man, a plan, a canal, Panama. That's definitely a palindrome. So you could have a palindrome tester which takes in a string, call it test string, and the palindrome uses loops, or a loop, to find out I'll do it right here. Returns true if test string, oops, is a palindrome, false otherwise. So if you passed in A, B, C, C, B, A, right? That was your test string. A, B, C, C, B, A. It's the same backwards and forwards. That would return true. Okay? So that's one sort of thing you should be able to do using being clever with your use of the loops that I just showed you. Here's another sort of thing. Public I'll do another boolean. Contains value. Make this easier. And we'll say this gets in an array of type int called, we'll call it just values. Okay? And what this would do is, oops, I need two things here. Let's assume that it is going to access a field, in other words, a global array. So we don't need to pass in the array because the method has access to it. So we're just going to pass in value. And what we're going to do here is, well, I'm even going to change this to string value. We can use an existing array we have of strings. String value. And what we would do is this returns or return true if value is contained in, what was our array, colors. So if you go through the array of colors and you find the string value that's passed into this, then you return true, else false. So given the current state of the array colors, if we pass in orange, what do we get back? return false. Okay? So those are the types of things you need to be able to do with arrays and array lists. You need to be very comfortable working with them in terms of going through them element by element, from the beginning to the end, from the end to the beginning, from the middle to the beginning, every other one. Any sort of way that you can think of using loops, right? And there are not too many ways, but you just need to be comfortable manipulating arrays. So you should spend some time before the test trying to do these two problems and maybe think of some of your own. And if you're comfortable doing those, then you shouldn't have much problem on the assessment on Thursday. Okay? Thanks. Oh, and as always, if you have questions, don't hesitate to get in touch.